Hello and welcome to this, the first episode of the Digital OD Agenda, the OD podcast from workpal. Each episode, Ray and Hannah will discuss the world of organisational development, the digital transformation, and the effects and benefits that this is having in the real world. They'll also discuss how workpal, the digital performance empowerment system, is aiding this transformation. And now, let's enter the podcast. Episode 1. OD with T.
Good morning everybody. Morning, Hannah.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you. Are you?
I'm getting there. I suppose we best say hello to anybody who's watching in the world wide webness of this kind of approach to talk to people. So if you're watching this, good morning. My name is Ray Pendleton. As you can see, this is Hannah Rogers, and we're both from a company called workpal. And we just thought we'd start doing some kind of 30 minutes, Hannah-ish, if we're lucky.
Yeah, that's it.
30-minute vignettes, because Hannah and I are both OD people working with a digital product in the OD space. And we found ourselves having conversations with each other and with clients and interested parties and bodies like, Health Education England and NHSEI about OD in the NHS. Oh yeah, drum roll, flashing lights. This is kind of an NHS one, guys. By all means, stay on. It's about performance and data and OD and all that kind of stuff. So please stay on if you're not from the NHS. But if you are from the NHS, this is certainly aimed at you. I would argue. So what we'd like to do, we're going to have a bit of a chat, and we have got some notes. Let's be honest, Hal, we've got one or two notes, but it is pretty unscripted because we did one recently, and that was unscripted, and we kind of enjoyed it, didn't we?
Yeah, well.
So even if it's me and you talk to nobody and no one's listening to this, we're going to have a bit of fun. Okay. Do you want to say anything before we kind of kick off, and I kind of put a bit of context to what we're going to talk about?
Yes, yeah. Well, so if I just do a quick introduction as well. So as Ray said, I'm Hannah and I am Head of Client Partnerships at workpal. And so my background is in HR and OD, initially in the NHS and then latterly in other public sector organisations. And I've also had the pleasure of working with some startup companies and other organisations in the private sector. So quite a varied background, but OD is kind of where kind of my focus is and has been for the last 10 or so years. Ray, do you want to do a quick potted history of you, and then that kind of sets the scene?
I will. Thank you, because I forgot to do that, didn't I? Thank you, very subtle. What Hannah did forget to mention was she's also at weekends like open supermarkets with big scissors as a Catherine Tate lookalike. And I do similar as Paul Hollywood, and I've got the Scouse accent as well. So, but my name is Ray Pendleton. Been an OD, head of OD, director of OD for 25 years. Last role was OD director in Aintree Hospital up in Liverpool, unsurprisingly. Left there about 2015 to pursue what we're doing now, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's a digital, how we can enable better performance and productivity through a digital-led solution, which is called workpal, which has took us down a path, which means we can have conversations like this, Hannah, because we're in the middle of a space which we know not many people occupy in terms of what we're trying to do and what we are doing with many clients, which is why we quite arrogantly think we've got some stuff to share, and we'll find out whether people want to listen or not, but we'll share some stuff. Okay.
So in terms of the conversation that we're going to have today is primarily around, with kind of the central is about data and how OD practitioners can use data in order to drive meaningful and sustainable change in organisations, which is a real focus for us at workpal. It's almost kind of the absolute golden star really of workpal and what it can really produce for organisations, and particularly OD, and how practitioners can use that in a real time way. And so it's kind of Ray touched upon one of the experiences that we have when we're working with OD folk in organisations is that they don't have this available, and so our role is to kind of help them to understand how they can utilise this to almost build added value that OD offers within organisations. So it's a trend that's kind of coming up more and more in conversations. It's one of the reasons that a lot of our clients come to us, and so we wanted to kind of have a conversation today which just kind of explores that in a little bit more depth.
Yeah, and this isn't preloaded, audience, but I've heard you speak on it. You know, if there's OD, L&D people on the call, you'll get this straight away. If you're not, get in touch and we'll tell you what it means. But in terms of the conscious competence model, in terms of OD as a kind of a practice, because I've been doing it for 20, 25 years, and we've always been data dry. We've inherited data from other departments like finance and stuff, and tried to make a meaning of it to better service our customers being internal staff, managers, and the organisation itself. But in terms of the last 20, 25 years, I think, would you agree? Loaded question. Would you agree that we've kind of come into, as a profession, a kind of unconscious incompetence level of delivery, because we've never used data to define what service should be delivered inside the organisation? Or very rarely. I'm sure there'll be people watching this saying, I've used data, but when we talk about the data we mean in a bit, hopefully that'll become clear. But would you agree that as a service provision, OD as a service provider, like finance as an internal service provider, like human resources, we'll have the debate one day whether HR should sit in OD and all that, but human resources is an internal service. Has OD been data dry for so many years that we've just got into a flow of, well, we've got no data, so we'll just work in this way with our internal provision?
Yeah, I think that's
your
fair.
own experience.
And I think, in my experience, then I think there's obviously there's different types of data, and I think, you know, there is absolutely so much value in the something that isn't digital, essentially. So there is so much kind of value in that, but I think that's kind of where OD's reliance is, because a fundamental value of OD is kind of being humanistic, and I think therefore we kind of gravitate more to spoken word and conversation and insights that we can gather from that, and I think that's really still very, very important. But it's how do you, certainly within a complex organisation such as the NHS, how do you get that on an ongoing basis? How do you get those insights which you can kind of analyse and kind of cross-reference and just kind of make sense of it? It's just really hard. And I think I've always found that working in large organisations is, how do you get that? How do you continue to have that meaningful conversation? And how can you do that deep generative listening on a kind of on a ongoing basis within kind of such a kind of a complex system? So I think it's, I think organisation OD is kind of typically data dry, and I think we just probably put a little bit too much reliance on maybe kind of singular or small group conversations rather than the potential, certainly, that kind of digital data can offer. And I think we need to do much more of that, because organisations are only getting more complex, especially with more remote hybrid working.
Yeah. You know, it's funny, as you're talking, the analogy that sprung to mind there for me was, there's a push and pull. So I call OD an internal service provision, because I've run OD teams which sit inside an organisation, and my job is to service that organisation the best I can with my resource. So that's what I mean by internal service provision. So as an OD practitioner, there's pull and push. So what I'd like to do is have data, so I understood the whole organisation and its subsequent parts, and be able to go to that client and say, I've noticed this about what's happening in your area. And I think in my smorgasbord of skills that I've got, you know, development centres, coaching, lean, 60, whatever I'm using as an OD practice, I can now apply that solution to them, because I understand where they are without them even talking to me. So that's the push bit. And the pull bit is where they come to me and say, we've all had this as OD leaders, senior leaders saying, Ray, in my department, I've got 5 teams and 1 team is terrible. Can you come and fix them? They're coming to you for a solution, because they perceive that's where it be. And the analogy that came to me was the Red Cross, as you were talking. So when there's a war, God forbid, and there's terrible things going on in Ukraine now, so maybe this is a terrible example. No, I'll continue. When there's some of this incident as a war, the Red Cross will deploy. They'll deploy, because the war is kind of a pull in the same way, you know, I talked about the organisation coming to them. But in terms of when there aren't any wars, please God, Red Cross still functions. So where does it know how best to place its resource? Because the Red Cross, the reason I use the Red Cross was, you said, we should never lose the humanistic and the conversational and the curiosities of the practitioners. Well, the Red Cross are as compassionate and caring as, you know, that's their role. But they still use data to find out if a war's going on, to get there. When no war situation, how are we best going out to service the needs out there? They use data for that, but they're a very humanistic service, same as we are. Where's our data? Where's our data that allows us to do that? Not inherited data, our data. And I'll segue on, if I may, Hannah, because
go for it.
I think with data drying, I think in our experience, is a lived experience, the emergence of digital and how digital can provide data to different people in the organisation to empower them, and also provide data to OD to give it, drum roll, flashing lights, OD with teeth. We had a conversation with, we'll protect the innocents by not mentioning the names, but we had a really good conversation recently with NHS England, didn't we? And we were talking about OD with teeth and thinking about how OD can evolve as a practice by having this data set, which made it a really good internal service provider. And that conversation, without divulging the ins and outs of that conversation, Hannah, that conversation was interesting because there seems to be a bit of an appetite to move forward with the OD profession in that kind of digital arena, doesn't there?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's necessary. I think it's got to happen. There's absolutely no.
It is happening.
Yeah.
Wink, wink, wink.
Yeah. But there is absolutely no allowance to stay where we are. It's just, the world is, I don't know. I think everything is so much. We're working in such a fast-paced environment, and keep on going back to kind of using this word complex, but it really is, and there's just no opportunity to stay at the status quo.
No.
To maintain that, it's just not. So yeah, digital has to be a massive feature in the way that OD works and where it gathers its intelligence from.
Yeah. And the NHS as a whole, to be fair to the NHS, we love the NHS, don't we? We're from the NHS, we're part of it. Even though we don't work directly for it, we still feel like we're part of it because we spend a lot of time in it. I don't think I've ever felt I've left the NHS, if I'm honest. But anyway, the NHS has made great strides. The last since 2015, NHSX, NHS Digital have made great strides. A lot of patient focused, but again, the emphasis is still the same. How do you provide data to make the patient better? How do you empower the patient with data? So these themes are coming through the NHS. I think it's about OD as a profession, recognising that, just being observant of that, which is ironic for OD as a profession, because our job is to be curious and observant, and to be observant of that. Before this came fintech, and fintech, who hasn't now got a bank thing on their phone? Yeah, so it's this emergent flavour of digital, and of course it's in the HR and OD report about it being digital. So we are on the cusp of doing something really good with data, and I think our lived experience is we've been doing this since 2015-16 and providing data to OD and senior people, OD workforce directors. It's a decent conversation point. Okay, thanks for that. Let's shift it over a little bit, and do one of Ray's favourite sayings, which will link back to what we talked about, hopefully, but we'll see. One of my favourite sayings is you don't fatten a goose by constantly weighing it. Okay, so you don't fatten a goose by, it's probably a 16th century term or something from, I don't know, from somewhere, some village somewhere. If anybody knows, get in touch and let us know where the saying comes from. I shall Google it, but I'm too lazy. You don't fatten a goose by constantly weighing it. And I've used this phrase a lot as I've gone around and talked to lots of organisations. I was up at Northeast the other week speaking to a couple of organisations, and I used it. And the reason why I use it is, and again, I speak as a fully paid up member of the NHS, love the NHS, worked in the NHS, love it. We work to what we're measured against, which is data on the other side of things. So we work to things like appraisal rates. So I remember being sat in my office and CQC landed an entry, and a few consultants came in and wanted data, quite rightly. That's their job, is to monitor and enforce regime and all like that. I get all that. I was relatively new to the NHS, and he said, what's your appraisal rate? Anyway, I told him the percentage, and then they moved on to the next question. And I innocently asked, oh, you're not interested in things like the quality of the appraisal, or what happened after the appraisal, or how the person felt about the appraisal, which obviously deals with EDI and bullying and all that kind of stuff. And they weren't. So you don't fatten a goose by constantly weighing it. We have a CQC regime who, in their total credit, I think it's September this year, there's some new well-led things, measures coming out, which include collaboration to reflect ICSs and stuff. So, whereas a profession, OD, I might say with a little HR on the end, we've been set the task of making sure appraisals happen. And so we do that, and we make appraisal, which is a once a year episodic performance thing, by the way, in order to feed a piece of data into a platform. So nationally, we can find out what the appraisal rates are, and we hope we go like that, and think those appraisal conversations are making a difference to performance, which I find kind of well, you said yourself, not about this subject, but you said we have to change, we have to evolve. I think CQC, we were next to them, weren't we, at the stand in NHS Confed? So we were chatting to them about it. They're lovely, lovely people. And they're evolving as well. They recognise they're evolving. But the things that they're measuring or wanting trust to measure out against, the OD departments to measure out against, if that kind of pull of data, what they need, changed, then that would surely, do you think, Hannah, start to refresh the thinking in the minds of the OD practitioners who then have to feed that measure.
Yeah.
It's got to, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I think something you just saying that made me think about, posed a question for me about who as OD are we serving, and at the moment, and working in the NHS with another public sector organisation, that is a challenge in terms of, you know, whether it's the government, whether it's other NHS bodies such as CQC that are asking for statistics and asking for kind of this type of data, which is very superficial, really, and doesn't give you that kind of that depth and that and the kind of the quality. Whereas if we were looking at it from an employee perspective, we would absolutely be looking at that, you know, employee experience and it's so critical. And so I think there's something about how do we, this is such a there's not an easy answer to this whatsoever. It's a long-term solution, I think, but it is kind of, if we can shift our kind of thinking in terms of we are serving employees, that is our role. Whole kind of topic there about servant leadership, I think, which is very interesting, rather than kind of it being more about ticking a box. Then I think there's real kind of power in that. I think definitely, yeah, and I think that's where if CQC are taking a different focus and are maybe looking at more of that qualitative level and emphasis, then that in itself kind of shifts organisations. You know, it acts as a nudge, it acts as a trigger to do something different. So I think they've got a really important role to play in this. You know, do we kind of keep it at that kind of tick box, or actually do we get into some really kind of knotty stuff that ultimately improves employee experience? Because that is absolutely kind of what OD is about. It's about improvements in organisations.
And continual improvement.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which again calls into question the once-a-year episodic appraisal, being
Absolutely.
the mender of all ills in the NHS.
Yeah.
I need to make a slight caveat in case this is coming across the wrong way from me, not from you, Hannah. At the time these measures were made, the ability to do anything else was probably stymied because technology wasn't where it is now. It's great CQC are moving some of their well-led stuff, and because I think technology has enabled that. But in terms of digital and the power of digital to drive data to the right forums and the right people, so they make a difference. It's real time data to manager, data to staff, data to organisation, data to heads of departments about workforce, so they can see it and be empowered to act.
Yeah.
That's why we're having this conversation now. We're in no way saying CQC are wrong, or we're not saying that. What we are saying is data now exists, which they should really be interested in to form some of their measures.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're banging that space because, and by the way, we're doing well. We must be 20 minutes in. I've not mentioned the company yet, so I will mention the company. So our product is called workpal, and it deals with everything across the employee life cycle. Well, sorry, the centre of the employee life cycle. And what people will interact with on a weekly, daily, monthly basis, including the once-a-year appraisal. So a member of staff is empowered, and with their manager, who's empowered also to create objectives, do one-to-ones, have one-to-one supervisions, do feedback, have reports for their dashboard relevant to them, link all of their things into the golden thread of the action plan, the department plan, the divisional plan, the organisation. It does all of these things in a really intelligent, quick way. But as a result of that, that's all I'll do about the company. Promise, that's all I'll do. But as a result of that, if I was in CQC or others, and this is an open invitation, we spoke to them at Confed and they seemed interested. If I was them, I'd be interested in what kind of data is currently being, it's in other words, not procured, is it? It's curated. It's currently being curated through platforms like WorkPal, which should make the governing Quango bodies go, well, if we know they can get hold of that data, this has got to be a measure, because we know if they're doing that, it's going to make a difference.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of digitally enabled data which will give OD teeth.
Yeah.
I think. Maybe that was more of a statement than a question, but I think that's where our heads are in terms of changing OD to be data enabled in order for it to have teeth, so it can do the push out to the organisation and say, we notice your department, your team manager, these group of people are this. Here's some suggested interventions, as well as the constant fix my team. There's a war on talent. We need a development centre. The senior echelons need 360 feedback, which hands up, we've all done those years and years, you know.
Yeah. I think there's something about going back to digital transformation, and I think this is one of the reasons why we can't maintain the status quo with it, because there is no way to get that depth of insight without having digital. It's just in terms of like, you know, to kind of the other way to do it, and which I think is still important, is about how you almost distribute that role across the organisation. But let's be honest, that's probably just not realistic to be able to do that right now, and absolutely kind of want to be developing that as a culture. But fast-paced, incredibly time poor, all the other challenges that are facing organisations, and particularly the NHS, it's just not realistic to do that. So the only way you can do that is through digital. And the thing about, I'm only a month into WorkPal, but one of the things that I really love about it and really value about it is that it's designed with people in mind, and it's designed with heart, without being overly cheesy or cringeworthy. But it's, you know, it's not just it's not a dry platform, it's an engaging platform. It's got thought and kind of consciousness behind of it that is driven by people engagement and how people are motivated, all of that kind of really, really important stuff. Yeah. So it's not just kind of, it's done with people in mind, as opposed to not just about kind of OD and organisations. And I think that makes a massive difference. And it comes back to this: who are we serving?
Yeah, absolutely, who we serving. And so just I'll put a health warning into this, actually, because when you say who we serve, and let's be self-preservationist for a second. I've run teams in banks, I've run teams in government, I've run teams in the NHS, and when the cuts come and you're at the top table and they say, well, actually, what can we cut away? I've always been probably in the top 2-3 people have been spoken to about, what does L&D do? What does OD do? How do you measure it? You know, if we don't do it for 2 years, and at least we'll survive, won't we? And I've had to succumb to that in organisations, knowing that the cutting of my staff in my services will make the organisation anorexic by the time we're ready to eat again. It's been difficult for the organisation to gather pace again. So in a self-preservationist way, when we're talking about OD evolving and grasping the nettle of things like digital, and whatever, by the way, whatever else anybody's listening wants to grasp the nettle of, you know, evolve, do something, but evolve. If we're grasping that nettle, that nettle, we are definitely protecting ourselves somewhat from the cuts that are inevitably going to come. Because we can prove our internal service provision has got teeth and it's got measures, and we know what's working and what's not working. We can have that credible conversation at the top table. So there's a bit of a, who do we serve? Well, let's think about ourselves. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, if you also look at the narrative around within the NHS, and whether that's in policy documents, whether that's talking to chief execs, HRDs, etc., there's such it's not about ticking the box. There's a real urgency and a real desire to improve the employee experience.
Yeah, there is.
And all of the things that then come off that in terms of attraction, retention, all of those kind of really important things.
Employer of choice and all that stuff, yeah.
Definitely, absolutely any aspect of the employee life cycle comes from a more positive employee experience in its broadest way. And so I think why it doesn't make any sense to then just focus on maybe some of those kind of more superficial KPIs, which are more traditional and more kind of within kind of board papers and executive team papers, all of that stuff. And I think it's just, in order to really move forward in the way that the rhetoric is in the NHS, we have to do something more in terms of understanding what is happening at the moment and how that is changing for the positive. And that's, and again, kind of, you know, not wanting to kind of overly kind of sell what we do, but it's real time. It's that continuous process of we diagnose effectively, we intervene, and then we measure the impact of that, and then we go again. You know, it's just that continuous cycle, and that's the absolute premise of OD, is kind of how do we do that? And if we don't go back and we don't see what the impact is, then it's just, who knows? And then it does come back to kind of, so what value have you added? And we can't answer the question. And I've had a lot of that, and I think there is that kind of old school belief really that OD is quite fluffy, and it's just about there's no foundation in there. And I think OD means something different in most organisations, and I think it can range from training through to something incredibly strategic and systems thinking. It's, you know, it's misconstrued, I think, in a number of ways, which doesn't help. But you know, we have to be moving ourselves away from this, from any image that it's pink and fluffy, and actually it has got teeth, and it's something that is really kind of vital and individual role actually in the organisation in terms of that systems view and thinking. Sorry, I'm rambling now.
No, so I've been rambling for 25 minutes. Don't worry. No one's noticed. Don't worry. Okay. I was going to say something now, and I've completely lost my thread. So I will park it there. Will I? Yes, I'll park it there. Okay. Let's move on slightly, because I'm sure we've only got a few minutes left. And if you're still with us, thank you. I want to move on to finally just to call to the future, to the present. Sorry. The Messenger report, Lord Messenger report recently, because we were at NHS Confed, and the world has changed since NHS Confed. Boris Johnson, I'm not having any political persuasion here, but Boris is gone. We've got a new Secretary of State for Health, Steve Barclay. We're all waiting to see what impact that might have. So things have changed. The world moves fast and politics moves quicker, I guess. But what remains is the Lord Messenger report, which every keynote speaker, Amanda Pritchard, Savage Abid at the time, the rest all cited the fact that this Messenger report has come through. So we've had a look at the Messenger report. And by the way, prior to this, we had a look at the Lord Carter report on warranted variations. You know, every few years, quite rightly, a report is commissioned for the NHS. Going back to Darcy, anybody remember the Darcy report? Yeah. Clinical leadership and all that. So these reports come and go, and they're all valid, and I'm not looking at any of them. But the Messenger report has come, and it's come with 7 key findings. And hopefully what we're about to talk about will encapsulate where we've been in this conversation so far. So one of the key findings is, the Messenger report is about looking at leadership and management across the NHS and making it better. Good idea, love the report. One of the key findings is to have a consistent appraisal platform across the NHS. So since that report's come out, bear in mind, I know a lot of people in the NHS. I have a lot of calls where people say, Ray, you must be delighted because workpal's here. It's been around for a while. People are using it. And, you know, they're looking for a consistent appraisal system. Do you know what, Hannah? I'll tell you and the audience what I told them. I went, that's great, but workpal isn't just an appraisal system. What your language, even the Lord Messenger report states, we need a consistent. And my challenge back politely to Lord Messenger and anybody who's listening is no, we don't. What we need is a performance platform that touches the NHS population daily, weekly, monthly, as they see fit in their service, around their shifts, around their lives, so they can access support and performance and data which is relevant to their role anytime they like. And workpal does all of that, and drum roll flashing lights, it has appraisal in it. But if we think, looking at that, and this is a strong challenge, if we think standardizing, even if it's our platform, even if it, you know, we're working hard to make it so, by the way, we're not shy about saying that, we think our platform is fantastic. But if the NHS took our platform to purely think about the appraisal bit, once a year conversation, which is important, especially with incremental pay and, you know, all those kind of things that are in the NHS, the agenda for change stuff. But to think the NHS is going to change and bridge the productivity gaps and the waiting list by having one performance conversation a year, regardless of its quality, I think we're going to struggle. Digital allows us now to address the Messenger report and say, yeah, we need a platform, not just appraisal. We need to be able to do one-to-ones, performance conversations, get hold of my manager, chat via digital stuff, request development relevant to my role, get on an LMS. We need to do all of these things in sync and around me as an individual in the NHS and empower me to get on with it. So Yeah, I'm sorry, I've rambled on a bit there, but the point being is, even something as strong and as powerful and as good as the Mestre report fell into the current thinking of, well, it's appraisal. When the Wales moved past it, it's past appraisal. You still have it, but it's a bigger thing now because digital's enabled that. And even in the Mestre report, which sets standards, which, as I said before, if CQC say the important thing is an appraisal rate, then the OD practice will gravitate towards making that measure hit.
Yeah.
My shout out to my OD brethren is crawl past it and look beyond it, because we can do more. And if we're at the forefront of doing that stuff for our customers, staff, managers, leaders, and in trusts, we will help shape these measures to be better, and we'll drive it, which makes us stronger.
Yeah.
Sorry, that was a real.
No. I think there is the potential to do a whole conversation just around appraisal.
Yeah, probably
versus kind of performance management. So I've just, as you were talking there, I've just had a look up just to see the dictionary definition for appraise.
Oh yeah.
Which is assess the value or quality of. And how much does that just speak to this once a year process, which is relatively top down led of I am going to assess the value of what it is that you have done and what you have the potential to do. And I think it's that it is, and I really enjoyed the Messenger report, and I felt, and certainly because it was one of the first things that when I came into this role after not working in the NHS for a while, I was really encouraged by it. And I think it's just, but I think it's such that terminology and that language we have to move away from, because I think the basis and the intent of that report is really good. It's very much grounded in values, behaviours, more of that holistic stuff that we know is so important in the way that we operate as individuals and how organisations operate. But I think we do have to be really mindful about the language that we use and therefore the premise of something like an appraisal system. It's just because it's just what we don't need is just another standardised system to be used in exactly the same way that it is now, in order to be able to quickly tell the CQC that we've met a standard, which and I'm not saying that that's what it would do, but I think there is a risk of that. You know, I think both of us, having worked for a long time in different public sector organisations, are used to systems coming down which aren't necessarily designed by the people who are meant to be using it, and also the people such as internal service providers like OD, of kind of what's the real kind of value and the opportunity here. So yeah, I think there's a whole nother conversation about that, but really important. And I just hope that as things progress on that, it is much more of that holistic view, because there's such a, if we're going to invest so significantly in a really, really important platform, then let's make it really good, and let's do it in a way which tackles a number of different things and provides us with incredible insight, such as workpal.
But Hannah, your words and your time is impeccable, because I think we've got a couple minutes left. So if it's okay, I'll kind of begin to tail off a little bit. But your words are really apt, in as much as if a platform has been brought in from on high and given to the NHS, and hasn't had much, ironically, staff engagement in terms of its design and its position and so on and so forth, then, you know, what's the chance of that? What's the likelihood of that working? But history is the best predictor of the future. We've all been there. I've put in top-down platforms thinking they're wonderful, but they've not happened. Anyway, so the nice thing about that is we will be having future conversations. Guys, audience, guys, hello. We're going to be doing a couple of these just to see how they go down. You can see that we're not throwing a lot of money at this, but we are throwing ourselves out in our time, which we think is valuable, and our experience. So hopefully, even if you disagree with what we're saying, hopefully you agree with an opposing view. However, to finish on one of Ray's other favourite phrases, is it takes a village to raise a child. So harking back to what Hannah's just talked about, a platform that's driven by users, a platform that's based in reality at the coalface, and all those kind of stuff. I'm pleased to say that, as I think it's September time, we'll be announcing soon, but in September time, we'll be hosting a series of conversations which include what we call a special interest group, which is basically anybody who's interested in workpal can come along, have a look at what we're doing, talk to other clients, talk to other people in our sales pipeline, and contribute and see what you think. And the reason why we do that is it takes a village to raise a child. We have developed workpal on the basis of working with NHS, workforce leaders, people leaders, OD practitioners, etc., So the design at the base level, the user interface level, is what's required, but also the data that's then driving things like learner needs analysis, incremental pay reports, talent maps, succession planning, objectives alignment to the golden thread of the organization's key goals, activity, who's using it when and why, which gives you a heat map of where the problems are in terms of digital poverty. And anyway, blah, 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 lots and lots of stuff. Quality of appraisal, we do quality of appraisal. We even do, I'll sell it, we even do, once the appraisal happened, if Hannah's my boss and does my appraisal, once it's all happened, I get a survey outside of Hannah's view, which was basically how was it for you, ranging from it was wonderful, Hannah's lovely, through to real problems and being bullied.
Yeah.
So we do a whole raft of stuff, and it's all designed by, this is why we feel like a fraud. All we've done the last few years is curated the platform because we've been working consistently with clients, ODHR professionals, people professionals in the NHS to say what does good look like, and workpal's here. So please, like us, share. I think this is going on LinkedIn. I think Rebecca, our marketing manager, is going to be pushing this out on social. So please do like it, please do share it. If you want to get in touch, or you just want to join our workpal page, please join and follow what we're doing. We've been going for years. We're growing quite rapidly, and we just want to have conversations with people who not necessarily agree with us, but have got something to offer. We're happy to learn.
Yeah.
Hannah, anything you want to say before we say goodbye?
No, I've enjoyed it, and I think there's lots more in the pipeline in terms of things to think about and to explore.
Yeah, no, but that's a good one. If anybody has watched this and you're thinking, actually, there's a bit of this that you thought, can you expand, can you branch? That's the trunk of what you talked about today. Branch out on this bit for me, and we'll join you, or branch out on this. We'll invite you along. We're a broad church. We don't care who you are. I don't care who I am. I don't care who you are, Hannah. Right, okay, we will love you and leave you. Have a great week. We record this on a Monday morning, and we're just finishing up about 12 o'clock. So the week is ahead. Carpe diem, seize the day, and we will see you soon. Take care. Hannah, thanks, love.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed that first episode of the Digital OD Agenda, the OD podcast with WorkPal. If you did, please come back next time. In the meantime, you can find us online on Twitter at WorkPal, on LinkedIn at WorkPal, and at www.workpal.com. Please, we want to start a conversation, so really do get in touch. See you next time.